안녕하십니까. 제6회 전국청소년 4.3 영어스피치대회 사회를 맡은 제주특별자치도교육청 홍일심 장학관입니다. 인사드리겠습니다. 전국청소년 4.3 영어스피치대회는 평화와 인권이라는 인류의 보편적 가치를 4.3을 통해 전 세계에 알리기 위해서 시작이 됐는데요. 회를 거듭할수록 학생들의 참여 열기가 뜨겁고 실력도 아주 대단합니다. 6회째를 맞이하는 올해도 신청 학생이 아주 많았습니다. 그래서 엄격한 사전 심사를 거쳐 중학생 11명, 고등학생 9명이 본선에 올라왔는데요. 제주 4.3을 바라보는 자신의 생각을 우리 학생들은 어떻게 풀어낼지가 굉장히 기대가 됩니다. 자, 그럼 지금부터 제6회 전국 청소년 4.3 영어 스피치 대회를 시작하겠습니다. 첫 번째 발표해 줄 학생은 귀일중학교 1학년 이서윤 학생입니다.
Do you like social media or YouTube? Most people do. But have you noticed that if you watched something yesterday, similar things kept showing up today? For teenagers, this might be videos about idols or unboxing items. This happens because computers learn what it likes and show us more of the same things. This can make it hard to think about different or important topics and opinions. Scientists say that AI world will come, that AI world start the future. AI can do many things, like help with studying. But remember, AI is made by people. If the people who make AI have the wrong ideas about history, those wrong ideas can be taught to everyone. History is not a subject that interests many people. History is an area where distortion can occur greatly depending on how it is viewed. I learned about an important event called the April 3rd incident, when camellia bloomed and fell. It happened on Jeju Island from 1947 to 1954 for 7 years. After Korea was free from Japan, there was a conflict. People in Jeju protested against the government, and the government responded with violence. Soldiers burned houses. The government ordered the killing of those inland from the coast. Many people had to hide in caves. Many innocent people died. But not many people remember this event. It's as important as the May 18 Gwangju democratization movement, which is more people know about. If such a world had continued, many things would have happened. People would have lived in constant fear of not knowing when they might die. They were not have been able to speak or act freely. They would have been forced to do things they didn't want to do, and were have been unable to intervene in unjust situations. Many were left the beautiful island of Jeju. I thought about whether the unbelievable human rights violations that occurred during the April 3rd incident have completely stopped now. And I think today, human rights are still being ignored. For example, some cafes and restaurants have the sign saying no kids zone, which is unfair to children. Also, beverage cans don't have enough information in Braille, making it hard for blind people to choose drinks. Sometimes, young or weak people's opinions are ignored. This is not right. If we remember events like the April 3rd incident and understand their importance, we can work to make sure such things never happen again. We need to recognize and correct small injustices around us. During these years, the April 3rd memorial service, some people following the Sabugyo's crops caused trouble because they didn't understand history correctly. This shows how important it is to learn and remember the history currently. Our society still violates human rights, and we do work for our own benefits. If we continue to ignore issues by saying, "It's not my problem," and let AI teach us wrong information, Future generations might not know the truth or their own rights. So it's up to us to remember and correct small injustice around us. We must remember the April 3rd incident. We need to ensure that such incident never happen again. The camellia flower, which bloomed during the April 3rd incident, symbolized the innocent people who died. While we cannot turn back time, when we remember and keep this tragedy alive in our memory, and strive to prevent any human rights violations, the camellia flower will bloom as a symbol of revival, as comforting the soul of the deceased. When you go home today, take a moment to think about human rights and peace. This is a task left to us by the April 3rd incident, and it is the way to live wisely in the AI area. Thank you.
네, 다음은 아라중학교 1학년 장서연 학생이 발표하겠습니다. 주제는 역사를 잇는 나라에게 미래는 없다입니다. 제주 4.3이 비극의 역사를 넘어 희망의 역사로 기록되기 위해 우리가 무엇을 해야 하는지를 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
The tragedy of Jeju's 4/3 massacre is still being felt to this day. The absolute devastating impact it had on Jeju is still being discovered. There are so many victims, some named, some still unknown. One victim, Jina's grandmother, is one who stands out to me the most. She covered her chin with 무명천 because she had a wound by a shot. That's why she got a nickname 무명천 grandmother. This poor woman suffered so much. She was injured so severely in her face that for the rest of her life, she could neither eat food nor drink water. She could not talk because it was too hard to move her jaw. She lived a very hard life from the moment of this injury until her death. How can we educate people on the tragedies that occurred during the years of the Jeju massacre? I believe there are a few ways to spread information about the Jeju 4/3 massacre, such as making dramas, movies, or cartoons. Seeking out education by visiting the 4/3 Museum or finding writings about the tragedy. For teenagers like me, we can go watch or take part in plays and concerts that are dedicated to showing the hidden history of Jeju. In a play, we can watch, understand, and empathize with the emotions of the people during that time. And through the lyrics of songs, we can hope to offer solace and comfort to those who need it, those that have suffered enough. I have a grandfather. He's always smiling brightly and cherishes me so much. I didn't know how much pain was hidden behind this happy smile. I learned that his father died when he was really young. He died during the April 3rd incident. His mother had to raise him alone. He remembers his father's face only through photographs. The same photographs that caused his mother so much pain. He watched his mother looking at pictures of her husband and tearing up every time. Even though many years had passed since his death, she couldn't ever forget the graphicness and sadness of losing her beloved. Unfortunately, the victims and the Jeju Islanders had to wait for a long time to receive acknowledgement of the tragedy. The government long wanted to keep information about the incident hidden. Here on Jeju, the camellia flowers symbolized the waiting. Camellia flowers are beautiful red flowers that can be seen in the cold winter on Jeju Island. Camellia flowers also express the people who are in despair. Finally, at the end of the long wait, after his election as a president on October 31st, 2003, President Roh Moo-hyun, as the representative of our country, offered the first official apology to the victims and families of the April 3rd massacre. It was an apology that came after a staggering 55 years. Of course, The pain the victims experienced must have been unbearable, but I do hope the grievances of the victims who unjustly met their deaths have been somewhat relieved. Because of the Jeju 43 massacre and the people who fought tirelessly alongside the victims, democracy was born and we were able to protect our human rights. The victims from Jeju, who simply wanted to live dignified lives on the island where they were born and raised, have finally been acknowledged. It is hard to imagine such pain and atrocities happening on this stunningly beautiful island. I hope that this violent and tragic history will not be repeated again, and I pray that April in Jeju becomes a hopeful April, not a tragic one. Education and information about the Jeju 43 massacre needs to be spread widely, and we have to commemorate the victims sincerely. I think the most important thing is not letting the deaths of the victims be in vain. It is our duty going forward to make the deaths of the victims more meaningful and shine brighter. Let's shout together. There is no future for a nation that has forgotten its history. Thank you so much for listening to my speech.
네, 다음은 페이스턴 국제학원 1학년 김주헌 학생입니다. 주제는 잊혀져간 것을 널리 알리는 의무입니다. 4.3의 제대로 된 진상규명을 위한 미국의 역할에 대해 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
I'm not interested in the cause of the rebellion. My mission is only to suppress. On May 20th, 1948, Colonel Russell Brown was appointed the Commander-in-Chief of American forces in Jeju Island. His appointment immediately followed the failed election due to low voter turnout in Jeju Island. To this day, many people think that the April 3rd incident was a single communist uprising against the establishment, not even mentioned in Korean history classes. In fact, it is the cause of the single largest death of Koreans in modern history, besides the Korean War. Why does it remain in obscurity, and what should we do to correct that? There are many unresolved issues surrounding the April 3rd incident. The right wing considers it a communist revolt and a smear campaign against the first president of Korea. The left wing believes that the right wing will do anything to throw shade on the Korean-American alliance. It has been politicized for all the wrong reasons. And because of that, it took half a century for people to even acknowledge that the government was one of the wrongdoers. But like all things, the truth is more complicated. Jeju Island was already angry at the police for being staffed with collaborators of Imperial Japan. They were even angrier that a mounted police had hit a youngster who was attending the celebration of the March 1st movement. They were angry that the public uproar on March 1st led to the death of 6 innocent civilians at the hands of the police. They were so upset that the whole island went on strike. They were upset that the election would effectively rip the country into 2 separate nations. They were upset about many things. April 3rd only marks the incident where armed civilians attacked the police. People don't know that what we now call the April 3rd incident is really talking about 7 years of scorched earth policy undertaken by the government and its allied military against its own people. People don't know that the reason most Jeju villages are on the coast was because the scorched earth policy wiped out all the inland villages. People don't know that our own government imprisoned and tortured thousands of civilians. People don't know that 1 in 8 people were killed. We don't even know who was killed because entire families were wiped out. We're still identifying their bones to this day. Late as it is, we must recover the honor of the fallen and make national reparations. But furthermore, we must make the issue known internationally and gain consensus and understanding. We can't bury the past. We can't paint the past red or blue. The important issue is not the ideology, but the truth that real people have died and entire villages were burned. To hide it, to obscure it, to twist the facts is to dishonor the people who are suffering in its wake to this day. Intentional or not, the United States military had twisted the facts and defined the large population to be dissident rioters. To justify their actions and the killing of civilians, propaganda movies were produced and spread worldwide. This resulted in the very obscurity the April 3rd incident lies buried under. In a recent panel on the April 3rd incident during the Jeju Peace Forum, the distinguished American diplomat and professor at Georgetown University, Robert Scallucci, said that it is important for the international community to be made aware of it first. If people become aware of the truth, redressing history can happen. Our mission is to face the truth, and in doing so, let the world remember the forgotten. Thank you.
네, 다음은 표선중학교 1학년 이서현 학생입니다. 주제는 누군가 나에게 가장 행복했던 장소를 묻는다면입니다. 우리 고장에서 일어났던 4.3 사건을 통해 우리가 가져야 할 평화와 인권의 정신에 대해 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
If someone asked me what my happiest place is, I would answer that it is Pearson Elementary School. For me, Pearson Elementary School is filled with happy memories and precious experiences from kindergarten to 6th grade. However, have you ever heard about the incident when many students were sacrificed at the school? Why did it happen in this safe and happy school? On July 14, 1950, many students were playing around the big pine tree in the playground of Pearson Elementary School. Without realizing that an unidentified object was an explosive, the students tapped every rock and it immediately exploded with thunderous roar, and 30 students of Pearson Elementary School were sacrificed. The explosive had been left there by a platinum marine station at the school at the time of SASAM. What was a platinum marine station at the school? Pearson Elementary School was used as a detention camp at the time of SASAM. As a result of an evacuation order, many residents of mountainside villages like Kashiri and Tosanri were detained in this place. Kashiri and Tosanri residents driven to further to family and massacred in Pearson Beach and Budman innocently. At the time of SASAM, we presume that the total numbers of victims of Pearson were 740 people. In Kashiri, a village which burned down and sacrificed 412 victims, a work of SASAM trials following the traces of SASAM was created in 2017. Counterinsurgents slaughtered about 160 people of Tosan Iri men aged 80 to 40 years old in Pearson Beach because they provided a place to stay temporarily to Tosan Iri. In Tosan Iri, which has become a village with a young man after SASAM, a statue of mother and son was donated by Kim Seung-nil in 2022 and is located in Tosan Iri as a sign of compassion and gratitude for a painful lives of mothers who raised their children without husbands. In addition, Pearson Elementary School's playground belatedly built up memorials, turning it into a place to commemorate the victims of explosions in 2015. For me, a place of happy memories was simultaneously a place where the pain of SASAM remained intact for some. I was ashamed to know that I did not notice that this place where I worked every day was a scene of pain. In addition, I considered how I could tell friends about SASAM. I thought that making our respective neighborhood stories and having time to share Sasam stories with friends in other neighborhoods would be great help to understand the incident. Furthermore, I think it would be wonderful if we could develop an application that provides this Sasam information for every place we visit, helping us connect our daily lives with the scene of Sasam. Through understanding Sasam, I hope my friends and I could feel furious about anti-humanitarianism and state violence in our community, and this will bring peace sensitivity into our minds, helping us emphasize the pain of victims. I hope these small efforts to uncover the truth and correct meanings of Sasam will be the small steps forward the human truth. Thank you for listening.
네, 다음은 한라중학교 2학년 김유은 학생입니다. 주제는 제주 4.3이 남긴 교훈, 불가침의 인권입니다. 제주 4.3이 우리에게 주는 교훈, 인간의 존엄과 자유, 평화의 권리가 얼마나 소중한 것인지에 대해서 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you have someone you miss? My mother misses her grandmother who used to cook hot dogs, bulgogi, and crab stew during vacations. My mom said all the delicious food made her feel chubby. While the feeling of missing someone often fades over time, for my mother, it has been growing stronger these days. In my hand, I hold a card given to the victims of Jeju 4.3 and their families as compensation, which provides certain benefits. Every time my mother uses it, she remembers her beloved grandmother, Ko Sunda. When my great-grandmother was just a child under the age of 10, she was taken to a hill along with many of her neighbors, all tied together with ropes. Without any explanation, armed police opened fire on the innocent people. The reason she never understood, my great-grandmother was released by a man. But tragically, her mother and 6-year-old sister were killed before her eyes. After this horrific event, she worked as a maid in a man's household for a long time before marrying my great-grandfather. As a young girl, my mom listened to this story without fully grasping its significance. Now, however, she understands why her grandmother repeated it time and again. My great-grandmother wanted to share her tragic memory with the world and ensure such a tragedy would never be repeated. This is not just a personal story of sadness, but our collective history, which we must reflect on, correct, and remember as it was. I'm not here today to discuss the causes of Jeju 4.3, but to emphasize human rights should never be violated for any reasons. The determined efforts of many individuals, the puzzle of Jeju 4.3, nearly lost into history, is being pieced together. Once stigmatized as Red Island, symbolizing ideological conflicts, Jeju has rightfully reclaimed its name as the Island of Peace. Former President Roh Moo-hyun visited Jeju Island and publicly apologized for the faults of the state, and the compensation is also being offered to the victims and their families. However, human rights violations, especially against innocent people, continue to occur worldwide. A protest movement in Syria that started in 2011 against the Assad regime turned into a civil war that has killed more than 30,000 people. Innocent civilians have endured bombings, chemical attacks, and other forms of violence deriving from political and ideological conflicts. In June 2019, over 1 million people in Hong Kong protested against a proposed extradition law to China. By January 2022, more than 10,000 protesters were arrested. The mostly peaceful protests were met with harsh police crackdowns. Since August 2021, Taliban rule in Afghanistan has led to severe human rights abuses.
strict interpretation of Sharia law have severely restricted women's rights, free speech, and press freedoms. Just as the memories of the victims and their families of Jeju 4-3 have revealed the truth, I believe the truth will always uncover hidden histories. It is my hope that everyone recognizes this undeniable truth. I wish a world where every individual, regardless of their backgrounds or belief, can live with dignity, freedom, and peace. I conclude my speech by emphasizing the word innocent, derived from the Latin, not harming. Innocent civilians who harm no one should never suffer harm for any reason. What my great-grandmother truly wished for as world peace. Thank you for listening to my speech.
네, 다음은 한라중학교 3학년 이성윤 학생입니다. 주제는 예술로 기억하는 제주 4.3입니다. 예술의 중요성과 예술로 4.3을 어떻게 알려야 하는지 그 필요성에 대해서 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Let's compare the amount of knowledge you have about the World War II to the Jeju 4-3 incident. Who caused it? When did it happen? Why did it happen? Then, ask the same questions about the Jeju 4-3 incident to yourself. I could guarantee that the majority of people here know more information about the World War II than the Jeju 4-3 incident. It is absolutely infuriating that while the world mourns for the atrocities of the World War II, the Jeju 4-3 incident still remains forgotten. Textbooks teach about foreign wars, but most people are still not aware about the fact that 1/10 of the population in Jeju was wiped out by the government. I believe that people should constantly be reminded of this incident so the cruel history does not repeat. I was deeply frustrated that history education was largely ineffective. In this speech, I will assert that the most powerful channel to raise awareness is through art. Firstly, I believe that a visual image can greatly contribute to the dissemination of information of the 4-3 incident than any other platform. Visual images can evoke strong emotions instantly, which makes a long-lasting impression. People tend to forget about long chunks of words or factual newspapers. Visual artwork can move viewers in ways that words alone cannot. Also, artwork is a universal language. They can communicate complex stories and emotions to a global audience, regardless of cultural or linguistic differences. Take a look at my favorite painting, Guernica, by Pablo Picasso. This artwork was painted when the Spanish Civil War and the Second World War was in action. Picasso is from Spain and painted this after he found out that the Nazis bombed the area of Guernica with 24 bombers. Guernica is a piece that presents you with a strong sensation more than any quote can give you. This painting uses black, gray, and white colors to describe war-torn human bodies to dramatically convey the violence and pain of the war, and transmits the cruelty of the situation. Secondly, stories travel faster and further than dry information. Stories can create a deep emotional connection with the audience. The emotional engagement ensures a more lasting effect. Stories are easily accessible and can spread awareness to a larger group of viewers. The film called Chisil by the director Omyeol realistically portrayed the 4-3 incident and had a significant impact around the world. In this film, the refugees were running short on food and had nowhere to sleep, so had to evacuate to a cave, leaving his mother in a thatched house. They left the house with some potatoes in the mother's hands. When they came back, they found the house engulfed in fire, the burnt corpse of his mother, and the potatoes cooked. This film enabled the viewers to vividly feel the history and pain of the victims. Finally, would you be surprised if I tell you that we have been doing this already? We are one of the biggest cultural powerhouses. South Korea is no longer a small, powerless, and unsteady country in Asia. Its status has notably risen on the global stage. News about South Korea's originality and creativity has already been spread worldwide and is established as an important pillar of global culture. Efforts to learn about Korean culture are happening all over the world. South Korea is internationally developing in art, filmography, architecture, and tourism. We are proudly living in this era and should take honor in it. The sorrowful histories of South Korea is also a special part of who we are. I believe that we should blend the painful memories of the 4/3 incident through art in more diverse ways. We should support and encourage the artists who make commitments to remember the 4/3 incident. I imagine a moment when a film about the 4/3 incident follows Parasite as a nominee at the Oscars, and 4/3 paintings are displayed at the Louvre Museum alongside Picasso's Massacre in Korea. The thought of young boys and girls listening to K-pop and thinking of dessert when they have potatoes brings a smile to my mouth. I strongly believe that this is most definitely an achievable vision. I wish for the day when the remarkable artworks of the 4/3 incident will be exhibited and played to heal the wounds of the forgotten victims of history.
네, 다음은 아라중학교 1학년 조한빛 학생입니다. 주제는 제주 4.3 무고한 희생과 진실의 목소리입니다. 4.3과 같은 비극의 역사가 반복되지 않기 위해 우리가 어떤 역사의식을 가져야 하는지에 대해서 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Before I start my presentation, I would like to make a confession. I want to confess something to you all. Honestly, the subject I am is in English. I would have prepared a math competition, science competition, or even a K-pop dance competition. However, my parents encouraged me to give it a try because they had never learned about the incident in school when they were students. So, I gathered the courage to come here today. I want to compare this tragic history to George Orwell's book, Animal Farm. By doing this, I hope to help us understand the true meaning of the Jeju April 3rd incident in a symbolic way. Long ago, there was a small island surrounded by beautiful meadows and forests. It was paradise animals live peacefully. On this island, there was lovely rabbit families and brave herds of deer and wise owl living together. However, on this peaceful island, a fierce pack of wolves began to grow, trying to multiply as they went by. One year, severe drought struck the island, and epidemic began. Conflict arose between the pack of wolves and the animal at the heart of the island. The wolves began to enforce their rules on the island animals and start taking prey freely to fill their bellies. The wolves divided the island animals into left-wing animals and right-wing animals, making them fight each other. The left-wing animals cried out for freedom and equality, while the right-wing animals sided with the wolves. As a result, the island descended into confusion and trust among the animals crumbled. But the fiercest wolf in the pack became the ruler of the island. The situation worsened. This wolf started identifying and punishing all animals who opposed him. He declared that he would kill all animals living above 5-kilometer coastal line. Many animals lost their lives, and they experienced the pain of losing their family and friends. There was a grandmother turtle with no jaw on the island. While fleeing the wolves' attack into the forest, She lost her parents and sibling and suffered severe injuries, losing her jaw. Grandmother unknowingly injured herself and had to cover her gruesome jaw with a cotton cloth. After that, she couldn't eat properly, had stomach problems as of her lives. She couldn't even talk because of the terrible events of that day. She couldn't sleep without medicine. She worried that the wolves might come back if they found out. So she went to sleep forever in the forest. The April 3rd incident was a painful event that lasted for a staggering 7 years, from March 1, 1947, involving armed clashes between civilian militias and punitive forces, resulting in numerous civilian casualties during the suppression operation. Now, we must speak up and commemorate this tragedy together. It's something we must share and remember. As the saying goes, history not remembered will repeat itself. The Jeju April 3rd incident on this island must not be burned or hidden anymore to ensure it never happens again. We must commemorate and awaken to this part of South Korea's history. Finally, as students, I want to send heartfelt condolences to the victims and families who suffered from the April 3rd incident, and especially to Jeju April 3rd victims who survived despite everything.
네, 다음은 신엄중학교 1학년 신데니얼 학생입니다. 주제는 우리는 어디에 서 있나요입니다. 제주섬 전체가 느끼는 제주 4.3의 아픔에 대해 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Jeju, famous for its imposing volcanic mountain and surrounding volcanic cones, stunning ocean views, and amazing tourism sites. But what if I told you that every square meter of Jeju's land you're stepping on was a major tourist site? And every single cave you come across was a refuge, when innocent people sheltered from the threat of death. Jeju International Airport, the first place you encounter when arriving in Jeju. However, buried beneath this airport, there are hundreds of dead bodies scattered around, the dead bodies of 4.3 victims. Even after a full excavation in 2007, there are still corpses beneath the airport. Sadly, more than 700 lives were taken at this airfield. After you've arrived in Jeju and you're wondering what tourist attraction you want to go to, you can't avoid thinking about Seongsan Ilchulbong. However, in the 4.3 era, every step closer the villagers trod towards this peak, the heavier the footsteps got. And when they arrived right in front of the peak, the only sensation they could feel was the blast of gunshots. This murder was called the dynamite incident, and here's how it happened. In 1948, December 29th, exactly 4 days before the massacre, some villagers of Ojori town who had dynamite got captured by the military and government troops. The troops claimed that the dynamite was for an ambush attack on them, when in reality, it was just a common tool the townspeople used for fishing that the Japanese military had left behind. Even so, the military troops gathered all the townspeople and captured either the people who knew how to work with gunpowder or were simply just late for the gathering. They were crammed into a potato warehouse for 4 days. Then the military troops took them all down to Umuke-dongsan and shot each and every one of them. Sadly, these sites of bloodshed are just to name a few. There are many more massacre sites, such as Bukchon Elementary School's 299 major massacre, and Hamdok Beach's 281 massacre, and Jeongbang Waterfall's 235 people. But why? Why was there such a big massacre on such a small island? It all started in 1947, March 1st, when the citizens of Jeju were doing a memorial gathering. After the gathering had finished and everybody was starting to head home, a little kid got hit by a police officer on a horse. However, the police didn't even apologize to the kid and just ignored him. This made the citizens of Jeju outraged and they decided to throw rocks in protest. The police officer took this as a threat and opened fire. From this incident, 6 people died and 8 people were injured. This incident brought among a strike about the citizens of Jeju. More than 95% of the government workers and officials participated in the strike. Then, in 1948, April 3rd, the armed citizens of Jeju attacked policemen and killed them and their family. This made the Korean government outraged, especially Professor Lee Seung-man, a strong candidate as the first Korean president. 1 month before the first national election since independence, a lot of Jeju people went up into the mountain in order to avoid the election, as they thought that Korea should have an election as one whole country. If they went ahead with the election as planned, the country would have been divided like how it is today. However, if they had an election together, both the North and the South, the country would have become one country once again. This angered Professor Lee even more, and so he sent troops down to Jeju. They killed, they tortured, only because of one absurd reason. The central government had labeled all the citizens of Jeju as communists. More than 10% of the citizens of Jeju died from this atrocity. They continued to kill and torture people for more than 7 years. Young children came home only to find their families gone. I want to end my speech by saying that everything I said today wasn't just a sad story, but the history of Korea, a part of history that should never be forgotten. The hurt it caused the whole generation and an entire island should not be underestimated. The victims and their families still bear the scars today. Let us remember them.
네, 다음은 귀일중학교 2학년 이선우 학생입니다. 주제는 그곳도 이 아름다움이 전해지길입니다. 4.3의 두려움과 고통 속에서 살고 계신 생존자와 유족을 치유하고 위로해야 하는 이유에 대해서 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
My maternal grandmother is a nursing care worker. She has been visiting the homes of senior citizens in need of care since a few years ago. And she started studying 4.3 incidents with her work. The elderly people aged 80 to 100 years old are all those who experienced the 4.3 when they were young, and still vividly talk about the tragic events of losing their families without knowing why and shed tears every day in the pain. My maternal grandmother, who was not born at that time, studied the 4.3 to emphasize with the pain of the elderly more closely, and shared the memories of 4.3 that she heard from the elderly, saying I must remember them. An 87-year-old grandfather living in Yonghung-ri lost his only sister at 10. She went out to the playground of an elementary school after being told to gather there, but was never able to come back home because of the hair of bullets. And his wife is now crying for her mother, who suffered from dementia and killed in the 4.3 when she was a child. He became the guardian of his wife, who became a child trapped in the memory of the 4.3 and still living in it. I'm not talking to everyone here today about the numerous names and ideological conflicts of the times, international or domestic, and socio-economic and left-right ideological conflicts such as genocide, rebellion, riot, Jeju People's Uprising, which can be summed up as the interpretation of Jeju 4.3. The Jeju 4.3 is recorded in detail as a matter of the past in numerous books and papers at home and abroad. However, we should remember that the 4.3 is painful and fearful reality that continues for someone.
Jeju people who long for a unified country fell victim to a massacre of typhoons, losing their family as a result of their strong resistance to cruel public power. That even young children were brought in as rats and subjected to subjugation. The Jeju 4.3, along with events such as the Nazi massacre of Jews, the May 18 Gwangju Democratic Uprising, the massacre of civilians in Nogli, should be remembered, and there should be healing, consideration, and appropriate treatment for the families of victims who have been sacrificed and are still bearing the pains that continues today. We have a confusing question as to why we humans have not learned from the past and are still repeating the history of harsh tragedies and disastrous reality where cruel history continues to take place today, such as Russia and Ukraine and Israel-Palestine war. In my neighborhood, the old site of Hagi Middle School and Nangung Middle School, which were established in hopes of learning, remains. Middle school students who said they couldn't just sit and study during the 4.3 took the lead in the 3.1-day ceremony held on March 1, 1947. And teachers, students, and residents were pressured by it, and the school was eventually closed and remained Nangung Middle School. But the school was closed as seniors took the lead in the armed struggle. But the tradition has continued for Gil Middle School, where I attend now. In April, when camellia flowers bloom, many tourists visit Camellia Flower Park in Jeju. They take pictures of beautiful scenery and store many happy memories. But we should not turn a blind eye to the elderly around us and the victims of the day, who are not happy with the beautiful scenery and face fear. In April this year, our school held an event to remember 4.3. It was an event to fill the camellia trees by floating the camellia flowers, the symbol of hope and victory. And I will end today's speech with a parade used as a representative at the event. The camellia flowers are beautiful again this year. I hope this beauty will be delivered to there. I sincerely hope that beautiful spring will come to everyone who is working through the history of pain. Thank you.
네, 중학교 마지막 발표자입니다. 신성여자중학교 1학년 고지우 학생입니다. 주제는 제주 4.3을 기억하라입니다. 우리가 4.3을 기억해야 하는 이유와 4.3 교육이 왜 중요한지에 대한 내용으로 발표한다고 합니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
Jeju is an island of peace. In fact, on the hidden side of Jeju, poignant history still exists. We call it Jeju 4.3 incident. On May 1st, in 1947, a child was hit by a horse hoof. The hoof was belonged to the horse of police who attended 3.1 Memorial Rally. However, the police ran away to his police station without apologizing. Some of the Jeju citizens who had watched what police did chased him and protested about his behavior. The police officers in the station considered the accident as a riot, so they shot a gun toward the people. 6 innocent people were killed, and this made Jeju citizens furious. Jeju citizens chose to carry out a strike and requested the police officers an apology for what the police had committed to people. A year later, on April 3rd, in 1948, a great number of people who protested were taken and tortured. The people who were suffered from repression by U.S. military government, police officers, and Northwest Korean Youth Association were no longer able to endure. The people said, police officers and Northwest Korean Youth Association should stop oppressing Jeju citizens, and we are against the division of our country. It was the beginning of a rising. The Jeju citizens set fire on the Halla Mountain and attacked the police station. Jeju 4.3 incident was started. Since the Korean military called the uprising, it became a bloody massacre. The people refused to the mountain or cave near the village, but they got caught slaughtered, and were sent to a prison. Some of them were killed since they were reported out as invaders' families. Jeju citizens were not guaranteed with happiness, rights, and safety of their lives. They have lived every single day in fear of sudden death. I know that Jeju 43 incident, which is gloomy and miserable, will not be forgiven by Jeju citizens. I feel sorrow, resentment, horror, and anger about what bereaved families went through. It was terrible for them to watch their family's death in front of their eyes. Nevertheless, the Korean government has not made a proper apology and has not admitted their fault. Moreover, they have claimed that Jeju citizens attacked the pontifical expedition unilaterally, even though it was a struggle to resist suppression. The reality they were not paying attention to Jeju 43 incidents with correct information is a shame. I was shocked when I heard that about 30,000 people were sacrificed in 7 years and about the tragic lives of bereaved family. However, the reason why Jeju 43 incident happened is not well known. The fact that we do not know much about it is not only our fault, so we should not only blame ourselves. Even though the Korean government has an obligation of apology for the butchery, the government needs to provide an opportunity to learn about the truth of Jeju 43 incident. I strongly feel that the intention to erase the history of Jeju 43 incident still remains, since the textbook that we use every day includes small amount of knowledge about it, and they're not definite. When the government tries to beg for forgiveness, it only buries Jeju 43 incident and cover up what the government did. Therefore, we have to criticize the attitude of the government. A while ago, I watched Jeju 43 incident's memorial ceremony, but an image of grandmother crying at the place was unforgettable. Her granddaughter said that her grandmother has not eaten any fishes since the incident. Her family was killed in the period of Jeju 43 incident, and they were thrown away to the beach. She thinks that some fishes had eaten the bodies of her family, so she does not even eat anchovy, which is a very tiny fish. It made me sad and feel sorry for her. The story was enough to understand what the victims of Jeju 43 incident might have gone through. For 7 years, the dead bodies have been floating around in the sea, and the Halai mountain that stands high on the island was covered with blood. I cannot imagine how some of the Jeju citizens underwent that horrible period without any human rights. We should not erase the history and pretend it never happened. We cannot define Jeju 43 incident simply as an armed conflict between Jeju citizens and the punitive expedition. We must call it as a slaughter that caused a lot of victims. It will be deeply embedded to the hearts of Jeju citizens. We cannot restore or change history, but we must try to avoid repetition of the brutal and merciless incident. This is the reason that government should educate Korean citizens about Jeju 43 incident. We also should have an interest about it. We should console and resolve the victims of sorrow as we reveal the facts about Jeju 43 incident with accurate truth. Thank you.
네, 이상으로 11명의 중학생 발표가 끝이 났습니다.